Hello, good morning from Miami. Buenos dias, if anyone speaks Spanish. We're going to officially start our webcast, our presentation on college application essays. You have a chat box, so if you want to ask me questions, I actually have a couple of questions already, so I'm going to get to those, but as you start kind of generating questions, by all means, put them in there, and then I'll dedicate a few minutes to address all, if not as many questions as possible towards the end of the presentation, so stick with us. So real quick, if you want to also let us know where you are joining in from, that'd be great, and then we can get an idea of where you're tuning in from. So it says, first question, hi, how can I apply for university? So the actual process is pretty similar to domestic students, so to students within the United States. You can apply through the Common Application if that is where the universities that you are looking at, that you're interested in, are on. So you really have to see what the application process is for the universities that you are applying to, and then go from there. But it's pretty much the same. It'll just have some kind of specific international student requirements. Okay, so let's get started. I think the second one was hello. Okay. All right, so let's get started. So for most of your universities, you'll have a main personal statement, and that ranges from 550 to 650 words. And so here you really want to showcase your best self. And in this presentation, I'll give you some tips and techniques to start thinking about how you want to say what you want to say. And then some at the end, I'll give you a quick storytelling technique that really maximizes engagement from your reader. So this essay in many ways is considered creative nonfiction in the sense that you are trying to employ narrative techniques, storytelling techniques. So there are moments in this essay where you should be definitely plunging into anecdote. So plunging into like a movie scene. So if I close my eyes when I'm reading, if I close my eyes when I'm listening to a specific paragraph in your essay, I should see scenes from a movie in the sense that you want to employ the five senses. You want to get very descriptive, bring in dialogue, an interesting way for international students to incorporate diversity and culture in the essays, to bring in dialogue from their native language if they speak English and another language. You can bring in snippets of Spanish, snippets of German, Italian, and then after that contextually translate it. So in the next sentence or two, explain what the dialogue was about. So the reader doesn't feel out of the loop, but it's a nice sly way of bringing in this diversity element to the essay. Okay, so here we go. The first main pointer that I want to share with you guys are these questions. These should be your guiding questions from a purpose perspective. So the essay, no matter the topic, should be addressing these three questions. Are you self-aware of your actions? So do you know the type of appropriate consequences that happen based on your behaviors and actions, how they affect not only you, but yourself? Are you a good decision maker? So if you are writing about an obstacle or a mistake that you made when you were younger, does that essay end up where you have had a similar situation and you've made the right call, or you made a better action, decision because of that previous mistake, right? So have you learned, can you show growth in the essay? So are you a good decision maker? And then three, and most important, I think, are you part of a larger community? So it's very difficult to say, I hate everyone, I love to be alone, right? Even if you love quiet moments of reflection and you're an introvert and you like to be alone sometimes to just gather yourself, and that's great. But ultimately, remember that you are trying to gain entry into their community. So they want to see how well you live and socialize and hang out in a community? So are you kind of a part of, and actively so, your community, however you define that? That could be a student organization, a club, family, friends, depending on the kind of part of your life you are capturing in the essay. All right, so let's continue. So you want to think about, rather than kind of, tell you these are yes topics, these are no topics, you want to think about the essay boiling down to at least one of these three. Really, really excellent essays kind of capture two, if not three, of these elements. So the essay should be kind of discussing either a character trait. So let's say you really want to show how you persevere, how you are super disciplined, and because of hard work and dedication, you have excelled X, Y, Z. So a character trait, right? Or who you are to others. So who you are because of your service, because of your leadership, community service, because of your kind of the way you kind of encourage people to be better. And so you showed this in examples, right? So what other people in your community would say about you. That's option number 2. And then number 3 is that you've had an experience so kind of foundational to who you are, so important to who you are, that it has helped shape you, basically, and you've either kind of questioned something or learned something. It's made you stronger. It's made you a more well-rounded individual. It's made you ready to take on the rigors of higher education, but also change and flexibility, right? Because you're coming to a different country. It's a big change. So the essay should essentially address one, if not all of these traits, right? Can you show a character trait, who you are, boiled down to kind of like, the essential values and principles, who you are to others, how other people value you, and is there an experience, an anecdote or two, a memory that you can kind of relay, usually in anecdote form, so in story form, that would show these, and then you kind of explain them later on. So you want to think about this essay as kind of bringing in a couple of different voices. So you have the story voice, where you're telling a story maybe at the beginning, and then you have another kind of didactic voice where you're teaching us something. So it's more authoritarian, it's more reflective. You're kind of breaking down the images that you had in your story. And then you kind of continue with another story or bring in more aspects of that first story. So I'll bring examples in. I feel like this kind of really gets clarified when we see a student example, but we'll get there in 1 second. Before that, what I wanted to do was basically introduce myself, right? So my day job is teaching writing and rhetoric at the University of Miami. So I teach freshmen, basically, no matter their major, international and domestic, how to write academic kind of rhetoric, right, to prepare them for college writing in all disciplines, ideally, right? So that's my day job. And then I'm also CEO, Chief Essay Expert at Write Your Acceptance. So I have a company where I consult with students through my online courses and small groups online, where we kind of work through these essays. So that's my experience, and it's been over 10 years now that I've been working with students in some capacity with applying to colleges and their college application essays. So that's who I am. If you want to kind of share who you are, where you're coming from, where you want to apply, by all means, you can share that on the chat box, and I'll kind of say hi. And if you have any questions as we go along, definitely put them in the chat box, because I will dedicate some time towards the end of the presentation to address those questions. Okay, so we continue. Okay, so before I show you the sample, there's a 3-part system that you want to think about when you are writing your essay. So first, you want to think about character trait. What is it that I want to showcase? Who I am to others. What is it that I want to share? And then that memory, that experience, it's so important, right? Maybe you focus in on one of the 3 first, and then you kind of add dimensions to the essay. So this is an essay that I really, really urge students to brainstorm, because There may be kind of a story, a memory that you want to tell and you want to capture, and then you try it one way, but then it doesn't work, so then you try it another way. So you don't want to commit to a complete essay until you're really kind of clear about the strategy of this essay. So you really want to think about it on two levels. What you're saying, but then also how you're saying it. And that how you're saying it is very, very important, because any extra seconds that you get with that admission officer who's read 175 essays before yours, you have extra seconds where they're keying in on you and they're paying attention to you. You become that much more memorable and you get that advantage, and that's real key. So you want to think about what you're saying, but also how you're saying it. And so think about the two voices, right? You're telling a story sometimes, and then you're also reflecting and breaking down and analyzing those images from that story so that you can show critical thinking. So once you kind of think about topic-wise what you want to kind of go with, you want to think about it as a three-part system. So this essay is past, present, future, legacy. So the past, you can open with the past, which would be that memory, that past anecdote where you're plunging into a story, right? You start describing macro and micro scenes, so like kind of the ambiance, the noises, the chatter, any dialogue that you capture, and then you go straight into like the very specific aspect of the story. That would be the past. Then the present is some sort, after that story, some sort of reflection about how you value, now that you're slightly older, young adult, a wiser kind of critical thinker, how you value that experience that you opened the essay with, right? So how has it shaped you? How has it changed you? And then you want to think about a future legacy at the end. So how are you making different decisions? How are you helping someone else make better choices? So you want to think about that future legacy as either a shift in mindset, so that you've kind of changed the way you behave in certain situations, or that you founded a student club, that you helped volunteer. So I worked with a student last year, I want to say last year or 2 years ago, where she was kind of in the beginning talking to her grandmother about their kind of Cuban Chinese ancestry, and how so much was lost from a language perspective, but certain cultural customs and food were kind of kept. And so then she kind of, the present part was evaluation of that experience, how she kind of now values that, and she's like, you know, cooking different dishes, that she is kind of trying to embody and follow some of the teachings that her grandmother would teach her. And then the future legacy was that she had the opportunity to volunteer at a hospital or an elementary school, I'm not sure which one, and she did a small activity for the kids to think about in story form, like a creative writing and like a photo album activity about their ancestry and about their family tree. So it was like a past experience with her grandmother about culture, a present valuation about how that is important, how she's trying to live that culture in a very direct and active way, and then how she is passing along this this effort to be proud of who you are and learn about your past to these smaller children through this like activity in a volunteer service. So it's like this past, present, future legacy essay. And you want to think about that. And so sometimes that future legacy is just a change in mindset. It's just kind of you switching in perspective, or you behaving a little differently, being more adaptable, more flexible with kind of, you know, problems as they arise. Okay, so let's look at an example. So let me kind of pull that up here. All right, so this is, I brought 3 excerpts from an essay. So it's not the complete essay, but it really does kind of capture the past, present, future. And so I'll read this to you, although you have it on the screen. About to embark on my longest run ever, I was missing my shoes. Expecting a short barefoot beach run, I found myself on the shores of Miami Beach in flip-flops. However, seeing my teammates armed with their game-ready faces and laced-up Asics, I knew something was wrong. At first, I chucked nervous laughter when the new reality set in. 2 hours. Coach decided he would be doing a 2-hour-long run, no ifs, ands, or buts. Scrambling to put on a scraggly pair of loner worn-down sneakers that felt 5 sizes too small, I started to run. All that lay ahead were scalding hot sand dunes that clung to my feet, begging me to stay in place. Lacking socks, I proudly built my personal furnace, as with each step a new blister called my feet home. While the shoes felt foreign, the humidity rising to the usual 300% felt all too familiar. So notice in this kind of opening anecdote, right? It's not a big thing. It's not this traumatic moment. It's just he's part of his cross-country team. And he is going to want to talk about how cross-country has been a teacher for him. So that is his kind of topic. And so he starts with kind of a surprise exercise that he thought was going to be much shorter, right? So it's not this huge anecdote that's like life-changing, but he will slowly unravel how important cross-country has been in his life. So look at the language a little bit, right? Look at the underline. So I found myself on the shores of Miami Beach in flip-flops. So if you can close your eyes and see him on the beach in flip-flops. It's very appropriate from like a stereotypical perspective, right? You think Miami Beach, you think the beach, you think tourism, you think leisure. Also kind of flip-flops feel kind of tourism and leisure, right? And then I highlighted the second one. I chucked nervous laughter. So you really don't chuck nervous laughter. It's a play on kind of phrasing, right? You kind of chuck when you are kind of throw up or something. So there's like a play there, and whenever possible, you want to kind of play with the figurative language. You want to bring in some alliteration where the consonant sounds kind of keep repeating, and that's happening in the next one. So scrambling to put on a scraggly pair of loner sneakers. So scrambling, scraggly, sneakers, sizes, scalding, right? So there's a lot of S sounds in two lines below. And so then it moves on from the 5 senses to then some of like the symbolic kind of discomfort, right? So we talk about the blisters, we talk about the 300% humidity. So there's definitely kind of a very imagistic, a very sensorial, like we see the 5 senses. We can feel the heat or imagine the heat. We can see him there. We can hear kind of nervous laughter. So we're already hitting 3 of the 5 senses, right? And I would say you can kind of feel the blisters if you've ever gotten a blister before and you know how uncomfortable that is. So the essay, the opening really kind of hits on a lot of storytelling techniques which are effective. So that would be the past experience, the beginning. Then this would be the present, an excerpt of the present valuation. So kind of reflecting on cross-country, which is his main topic for the essay. So I'll continue. Long distance running has been the most ardent teacher on what it means to be mentally strong in the face of challenge. On this run, like on my most demanding hikes, cue the Presidential Traverse in New Hampshire, shaking the mental cobwebs is more taxing than the physical demands. Humility towards a daunting present is necessary not only when scaling unforgiving terrain or finishing a gruesome 12-miler, but also, and then it continues. So notice how here it's not this kind of, super elaborate, complex, nuanced evaluation. It's just a quick reflection on how long distance running has been a teacher. And then the strength in this section is that it goes into how. So it's not only that, you can say, oh, I've learned a lot while running. It's that you want to say, how have you learned a lot? What have you learned a lot? And notice the next line, right? On this run, like on most demanding hikes. So now we get into different examples of how he pushes himself physically to get to a different level, a different kind of success, right? Shaking the mental cobwebs is more taxing than the physical demands. That is our lesson. So how has long distance or a demanding hike kind of, what has it taught you? Right there. That the mental head game is sometimes harder than the physical kind of demands, right, of the exercise. And so in a previous draft, we had a lot of first person. You can have some first person, I believe, I think, absolutely you can do that. But whenever possible, especially if you're going to talk about the lesson part, you want to take that out, because more often than not, if you take out I believe or I think, usually that rest of the sentence is a complete sentence. So instead of saying I believe that shaking the mental cobwebs is more taxing than the physical demands, you just take out I believe and you put shaking the mental cobwebs, and it's a complete thought. So that's one way of kind of establishing your authority and it doesn't take away from the story. It kind of adds a level of you know what you're saying. Okay, and then we have an example of future legacy. So same essay. This is towards the end. So this gets into more kind of the symbolics. Life brings all kinds of challenges to anyone who walks its treacherous path. However, these often defining moments of struggle don't define me, but mold me into a better and stronger version of my previous self. They allow for reactions, and it is in how I react, in my behavior and my ability to be open and adaptable to less than perfect circumstances, that I grow in emotional and psychological intelligence. Whether it be running in circles, hiking towards a clear destination, or showing up for my family, all tough roads lead to my betterment and strengthen my collective bond with those who travel the road with me. Investing these moments of adversity to achieve a new perspective, I realized the mountain once deemed too large to scale was possible all along. So this would be the future legacy. Notice that here we don't have a concrete kind of service activity or student club that you founded. It's really kind of more a change in oneself, right? It's more kind of within the individual writing, but it's a change in mind shift. It's a new appreciation of a journey, basically, right? And so notice how there's a lot of like the essay is primarily about long distance running and cross country and what that has taught him, right? But then he also throws in he's a very active teenager, and so he does a lot of hikes, he does, he camps, he does different stuff outdoors. So he kind of adds that in because it's part of it. It adds other dimensions to his interests, right? And it's still kind of in line with the kind of the story that he's telling. And so here, notice that the end has a lot of like journey imagery. Like we have life brings all kinds of challenges to anyone who walks its treacherous path, right? So instead of saying there are a lot of problems when life brings a lot of problems, or there are a lot of problems in life, he all of a sudden kind of changed it to its treacherous path, right? As if life, he's kind of categorizing it as a journey, categorizing symbolically similar to those long distance runs, right? And so this is the key line, I think, that shows a shift in mindset. The next kind of underline. They allow for reactions, so the problems, right? And it is in how I react, in my behavior and my ability to be open and adaptable to less than perfect circumstances, that I grow in emotional and psychological intelligence. So it's not only that things are going to happen and they're less than ideal, it's that you choose to react a certain way, right? It's that you have that kind of power to pick your behavior and pick how you affect those around you. And then again, more symbology of the journey kind of category, right? All tough roads lead to my betterment. Kind of, that would maybe to some ring the whole all roads lead to Rome, and strengthen my collective bond with those who traveled the road with me. So life was its treacherous path, now travel the road with me. And so then we end with a quick journey symbol, right? And he's been hiking. We know about Mount Traverse earlier. So the last line, I love it in the sense that it's through image that we see what he's learned. Investing these moments of adversity to achieve a new perspective. Here's the key line. I realized the mountain once deemed too large to scale was possible all along. So that mountain could be anything. That mountain could be applying to college. It could be overwhelming. You don't know if you're going to be able to do everything you need to do. But then when you're on the other side of it, you look down or you look up, depending on where you are with mountain, and you realize that the one thing you thought was impossible, you made it possible. And it was then possible all along. So it's this kind of very optimistic, very journey-driven idea that is, one, very, very connected to his overall message, and two, it's a beautiful imagery that you leave the reader with. And so you want to think about those types of kind of lines that allow you to bring in story, that allow you to bring in kind of critical reflection, and figurative language that you can close your eyes and really see, kind of hang on to an image that that will make you as a writer and as an applicant that much more memorable, basically, and unique. And so then one thing that we're not seeing here, but that I think for international students especially, or for students who speak multiple languages, is that you can bring in dialogue, especially if you open with a scene of a family dinner, or with a friend, talking with a friend, whatever your story is, right? You can bring in dialogue from different languages, and then kind of, I would pick one language. I wouldn't do kind of multiple languages outside of English, just to not confuse. And then you kind of afterwards contextualize contextualize the meaning, what you meant in that dialogue, instead of like directly translating it. And that's an interesting way of bringing in imagery, an interesting way of bringing diversity to your paper, to your personal statement. Okay, so we continue. So one thing you want to think about earlier in the slides, right? How you start thinking about topics is if it's hitting at least one of the three things, right? Character trait, who you are to others, right, in your community, or an experience that has been so profound in your life, it has shaped who you are, or it's helped shape who you are. Once you pick one of those three, and a great essay, like we said, probably hits two of or three of those, right? But you should start with one to kind of get going. Then you want to think about past, present, future legacy. So once you start kind of with an idea that you want to continue to expand upon, then you want to think about, okay, what is an anecdote? What is a story that I can tell that is emblematic of the experience or the character trait or the who I am to others? Emblematic, I mean that it's really showing some key images that you can then analyze and break down in your present valuation that show, reveal growth in who you are as a person, reveal maturity, reveal your character trait, right? So it's not enough, I think, my kind of informed opinion, it's not enough to say, I am someone who's very disciplined. What you want to do is start your essay with an anecdote where you're showing that discipline, right? And then you talk about how in that anecdote you're showing discipline that you have, that you exercise in many aspects of your life. And then you go into future legacy. So character trait, who you are to others, formative foundational experience. Once you get with one of those and you start thinking about topic, then what is my past, what is my present, what is my future legacy about that topic? And then you can kind of start bringing in the two different voices, right? Storytelling, plunge into some anecdotes, really show that sensorial kind of description, five senses. I want to see, hear, taste, touch whenever possible. Food and dialogue is great for that. If your anecdotes have food or dialogue, or a combination of both. And then those critical reflection moments where you are kind of breaking down, analyzing it, and you're showing critical depth and you're showing critical thinking. So here I wanted to share with you guys a quick kind of storytelling technique that is not in this essay, but I think it's a really great one, especially with students. I hear a lot, I'm not a great writer, I don't love to write, I don't know how to kind of approach this. So this storytelling technique is one of many that I have to share with you, but is one that I find that is pretty easy once you start getting going, and it's incredibly poetic. Like, so the kind of aftermath once you have a finished product is great. So that is to defamiliarize. So, and basically renders an image unfamiliar. So an image that we kind of know, instead of just saying that image and moving on, you can kind of add some poetic qualities, and this would be just kind of, sparingly. So I would do this maybe 2-3 times max in an essay, because you have different storytelling techniques that you want to bring in. But basically this either gives humanistic qualities to the item that you are defamiliarizing, or it kind of represents it fresh. So like, for instance, I have 4 examples here. The plate spinning in the background offered a rhythmic hum to our exchange. So think about kind of in an anecdote, you're talking with someone, you're capturing that dialogue, you're capturing the tense moment or happy moment or whatever, and then you want to kind of capture the micro, kind of zoom out and see what's happening around you. Instead of saying the microwave was noisy, you can say the plate spinning in the background offered a rhythmic hum to our exchange, right? So you just basically, instead of saying what it is, you say what it does slowly, and then the next line you can say the microwave beeped and kind of prompted, whoever to leave the room or something. So you can say what it is at the end. Don't leave people guessing, but have a sentence before you say what it is that kind of defamiliarizes it and makes it more poetic. It also kind of keeps the reader on their toes, so they're trying to figure out, because we're very nosy as readers, so you're trying to figure out what it is, and then you tell them in the next line. So number 2, a martyr of sorts, I broke its spine and it gave me all it knew. So it has like a violent quality almost, right? Like I broke its spine, and it's a book, right? And so when you read a book and when you're kind of basically opening and closing the same book, right, you kind of break the spine, and so it has like that wrinkly kind of partition in the middle. And so and then you would say the book's on my bookshelf or whatever. Number 3. The frozen smile suggests a lifetime of happiness, and yet there's sadness in its devotion to the past, to what once was. So instead of saying the photographs were family pictures of when we were babies, you can say something like, these are frozen smiles, right? They're kind of expressions that are no longer right now. And they suggest a lifetime of happiness. So what if you're going to talk about something kind of sad, about someone who is sad, or an obstacle that you've overcome, and you start the essay with a picture of them smiling. So you have this kind of contrast. So this is a great kind of defamiliarize moment. And then you say it's a photograph, and you talk about who it is and what's happening and how far you've come from that in your present valuation. And then, okay, the last one. Like a priest or confessor, we spend every waking moment divulging our innermost thoughts, and yet it never responds. And that can be your laptop, computer, social media, that could be smartphone, right? So we tell it everything. We share everything through there, and they never share back, right? So our technology never shares anything back in that sense. So it's a nice kind of religious quality to it, right? Confessor, priest, we confess to it, we divulge our secrets, and then they never respond. So that's an interesting kind of way of then getting into a conversation about social media, conversation about technology, and how dependent we are on it. Let me grab a sip of water 1 second. All right, so how you guys doing? Let me see down here. Hi from Belarus. Welcome, welcome. Hello from Miami. Okay. So what are the requirements for international students to take admission in Centennial College? So that's very specific. And to be honest, I don't know what it would be for Centennial College. So you want to go into the web page, right? And to just Google what those requirements are. Because for most institutions, from a content perspective, the application is very similar, same citizenship citizenship questions, and then the essays tend to be the same. And then you have a language proficiency test that you have to take, and then the visa stuff tend to be, obviously, is different than domestic students. So that's from an overview perspective, there's a lot more similar than there is different. But if you're going to be very specific about schools, you want to definitely make sure that you go into their specific web pages or contact the international admission officer. They hear from students all the time, so you want to be respectful, say, hi, I'm writing from blah, 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 I'm interested in your undergraduate admissions program, and what are the requirements, or where should I get started? And they'll be happy to offer very specific examples, or point you in the right direction. Okay, so we continue. I wanted to actually show you guys a couple of resources for international students. If you haven't really started the process, or if you're starting the process and you find yourself a little overwhelmed, it is a lot of information thrown at you between exams and language proficiency tests and essays and applications. It's a lot. So you definitely want to, I mean, if this is what you're interested in, you definitely want to kind of every day do a little something. And so my expertise are on the essays and the writing supplements that you have to write, right? And so how you want to capture the messaging, and so what you're saying and how you're saying, and that's kind of where I come in. But very briefly, right? Every student's story is different. Every student has a unique and important story to tell. I truly believe that, which is why I feel like it almost doesn't matter what you write about from a topic perspective, but it's how you tell your story, and it's how you kind of think through adversity, opportunity, humility that that really showcases and highlights who you are and separates you from the pack. And so international students in many ways have an edge. Schools are very interested in bringing international students onto their campuses. They want that diversity. They want students with different educational backgrounds and different kind of life paths. And so you have an edge in that schools are seeking international students to add to their community. And so I wanted to share some additional resources here for students. So since my expertise are the essays, I would guide you through there first, right? So the first thing you want to do is figure out if, as an international student, your application, your school is requiring an essay, and if so, how many? So on average, students here in the States are applying to anywhere between 7 and 12 schools. So you want to think about where you want to apply, right? And so I would also kind of urge you to have a blend. So don't only think about the big name schools. If you can think of the name without ever even researching, your schools maybe you're guided by a brand, an idea, and not necessarily what's like on the ground and what's being kind of lived in every day. So you want to think about a couple things. If you're going to apply and you're really serious about it, and you kind of model the U.S. Student kind of admission, you're applying to 7 to 12 schools. You want to think about, do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to be in a very specific region, right? Do you want to be in the Northeast, New York, Boston, New England? Do you want to be in the Midwest, Michigan? Do you want to be in the South, Georgia, Alabama, Florida? Do you want to be on the West Coast, California, right? So, and then there's so many, hundreds and hundreds of schools, and excellent schools. There are thousands of institutions here in the States. And so you want to think about big city, or you don't really care. Do you want a college town? Do you want a school that's plunged into a big city that doesn't really have a campus? Or do you want like a campus feel that it's really a college town? All of the activities are surrounding the school. Do you like sports? Do you like American football? Do you want a school that has American football? Or do you rather basketball? Do you want schools that are known for basketball? Do you want Division I sports? Or do you really not care for sports? So that doesn't, it shouldn't really factor in. So all of these questions you should think about, and then what kind of international programs do they have? Do they have kind of actual kind of international community on their campus that you kind of would feel that you would meet students that are also international from different countries, but that you have a kind of a nice bond. Sometimes there's a dorm for international students. Sometimes there's just kind of community events and activities that are fun and great too. So think about kind of where and how you want to apply, and very specific to kind of beyond the brand, think about kind of the type of school, the type of experience. So then back to the actual essays, right? Know your requirements. So once you start a list, go on to Common Application or Coalition. Are the schools on that platform? Can you apply through that platform, or are they off platform and you have to apply through their website? You want to think about showing off your accomplishments in academics and extracurricular activities. So sometimes when I'm working with international students, they don't want to be kind of show-offy. They don't want to come off as like a bragger. And that's fair, and culturally you want to be sensitive to that, absolutely. But you want to think about this essay and the short essays, the writing supplements that you need to write, as really showcasing your best self. And that's when you show accomplishments. That's when you show, or that you've kind of fallen and you've picked yourself back up, that you learned from an obstacle, that you've learned from an experience. So you want to show modesty, though, and be humble when you're speaking about how you'll fit in their institution, what you'll bring to their institution, how you react to both kind of adversity and opportunity and excellence. So you want to showcase what you've done and what you've learned, but then also be humble in other aspects of when you're reflecting, when you're talking to them. And remember, your essays are your direct line of communication with the admission officers. So it's very, very important to really kind of showcase as many different aspects of who you are. So the application is like this holistic picture of who you are. It's like a quilt of many different pictures kind of tied together, because we're not only one story, right? So the story that you tell with your grades and with your extracurriculars and then with your essay could be all different stories, but put together is a well-rounded student, right? So here I put some links that I believe College Week Live, which we want to say thank you to for hosting this webcast and for allowing me to chat with you guys. So thank you, College Week Live. I believe they are going to, they're recording this presentation and they'll upload this to the website. So you'll have this presentation there. And so I wanted to share a couple of links for you. U.S. News and World Report. It's a blog, basically what international students should be looking at. What are some of the admission mistakes to avoid? There's an internationalstudent.com study for U.S. So there's like the application process broken down into very manageable steps. So I thought that was a great website. And then I put two universities, University of Oregon and University of Michigan, and how different their websites are for international students, which is why it's so important that once you have your college list, that you go into each university's international site, so that you see the requirements that each one is asking you. And I would start my own document with like the bullet points, right? Due date, requirements, any documents you need to gather together, essays, application, language test, or any other standardized tests. The same for the next school, the same for the next school, and like that, so that you can kind of together see everything that you need to work on. And then I wanted to show you guys. So I have so much to share with you guys, and we're only really confined to an hour, which I feel has been great and very productive. And I hope that you've kind of found our information to help you jumpstart that main essay. But I do have so much to show you guys and share. So my work as through Write Your Acceptance is that I have online courses. So students from anywhere in the world, and there are 2 million students applying to universities in the United States every year, which is insane, right? So students from anywhere in the world can buy my courses online, take them. I have videos recorded of me chatting with you. Then I have handouts, and I have PowerPoints, and I have sample student essays that I've broken down and analyzed. And so you go at your own pace. But the great thing is that once a week with all of my enrolled students, I meet in small groups. So I don't meet with like a huge group. I meet in very small groups once a week online through like a webcast similar to this, like FaceTime. And we chat about where they are in their essay. So they show me a sample, paragraph. We brainstorm, and we make sure that they're staying on task, and we stay accountable for what you're doing. So you get the information online where you can access and stay on your own path, and go at your own pace. But then you're also getting, for a month, once a week chats with me directly, so that you can continue with your essays. And so they have everything from more storytelling techniques and kind of how to break that down and what you should be thinking about, to actual buzzwords and symbolism that you can bring into your essay. And I break those down on how you can apply the different symbolism, like mobility, gendered expectations, race and ethnicity, minority culture. So all of these kind of broken down so that you can apply the ones that you think are important to your essay. So you sound like a smarty pants. Which is also what you want to kind of think through in the essay. So you want to tell a good story, but then you also want to critically analyze and break it down so that you can show growth, that you can show maturity, that you can show who you are as a thinking person. And so I have two courses. I have the course for how to write your college essay, which is what we've been talking about, that main personal statement. And then I have another course on the supplements, so the kind of activity, identity, and the why us. So usually the supplements, the additional essays that universities sometimes have, and so depending on the university, depends on if they have additional sources, additional writing supplements. Some have 1, some have 3, some have 5. So it really depends on the school. I show you how to do an identity one, so another aspect of who you are that's not being told in the main essay. So once you write something about the main essay, you should not use that, you should not recycle that topic again. So everything else should be brand new information. So it's about who you are, another aspect of your identity, another aspect of an activity that you do, and then the why us. So why do you want to attend the University of Central Florida in Orlando? Why do you want to attend the University of Michigan? Those are very, very specific, very research-driven essays, and they're very, very different from anything storytelling about you. It's all about them. And so actually, and I'll do a kind of a quick sale, flash sale for my College Week Live students for the next 24 hours. As soon as we hang up here at noon, for 24 hours, if you buy the main college essay course, I will email you the free template, so the template for free for the Why Us essay, and save you basically buying the second course. So so any questions on this, but then any other questions on the main essay, start kind of sending them my way. Oh, I got a thanks a million. Great job. All the best to you. All the best to you, Yulia. Very nice to chat with you. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm getting a couple of hellos. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. All right. So we have a couple of minutes. I can start chatting because I just chat. And but if you have questions, I don't have any in the queue. As you kind of think about questions, start kind of sending them my way. And so I guess I'll end with a couple of do's and don'ts that I didn't really cover. Let's start with don'ts. Not that I'm negative, but this kind of will help you clear the deck, right? So you don't want to write, so let's start with that why us. If you have an essay for a school that says something like, why do you want to attend the University of Oregon, Tulane University, why us? You want to think about that essay as all about them. So you want to research a course, a professor, a study abroad experience, a research opportunity for undergrads. So you want to be talking about how you see yourself academically, but also socially. They're a student organization you'd want to participate in. Really show them how you see yourself already blending so successfully into their community. So you want to avoid the simple expected descriptions. I love New York City. That's why I'm applying to NYU, because the last time I went to New York, I saw myself there. I'm a big city girl. That has nothing to do with their institution. That really shows nothing that you've learned about who they are, except that you know their brand. So you want to make sure that that essay, if you have that essay, that is research, 100%. So no topics to avoid for the main essay. You want to avoid talking about bad grades. So there's going to be a section in your applications where you have room for that. And, you know, it'll ask you, do you have any additional information that you want to share that you don't feel your application is complete without? That's where you would put that. But in the main essay, you want to showcase triumph. You want to showcase growth. You want to really show the best aspect of who you are. And so that's not really kind of, sometimes explaining bad grades tend to sound like excuses. You want to avoid that. You want to avoid writing about someone else's life story. So grandmas, grandpas, uncles, brothers, sisters, you can write about them, but make sure that really the main focus about that essay is you, is bringing it back to what you've learned from that relationship, what you've learned with living with them, learning from them, hanging out with them. And so sometimes students want to write about grandma, but then the whole essay is about grandma, and the university admission officers don't really learn anything about the student. So make sure that that essay is coming back to them, coming back to you, coming back to the student. Another don't is avoid writing about how to end poverty, how, you know, your large world plans. So peace, how you find world peace, how you'll end poverty. You're not going to solve any of these really large issues in 600 words. So I would avoid kind of these like very lavish, kind of ambitious, almost philosophical stories, right? So really showcase you very, very concretely. And that's why the storytelling in the beginning is very interesting, because it really brings you down to concrete, real life moment. If I have any athletes in the room, I would avoid writing about the big game. So we call it the big game. So basically, you know, that experience where your team was losing and you thought you were never going to win, but then you came all together and you gave it 110%, and then you won in your state championship or your, like, you know, national champions. Notice how the story basically ends the same. It's like even the climax is the same. And so it could be one of the most important moments of your life, right? And I don't want to take that away from you, but what I want to make sure is that you steer clear from sounding like hundreds of other applicants that basically will tell the same story, just from a different country, from a different city. But if they would have lost, then maybe they wouldn't tell that story, right? So because it ends the same, you're becoming less memorable because you are kind of bucketing yourself with hundreds of other applications that sound the same. I think that's it. Remember those 3 questions, right? So that you know repercussions and consequences, that your behaviors and actions have consequences to others. You know how you affect others. You know that you are part of a larger community, and so you're kind of aware of your actions and who you are. I got a question. How do you find your courses? Great question. So this is my information here at the bottom. So my website is writeyouracceptance.com, and right on the homepage you'll find the 2 courses, and you can start there. So writeyouracceptance.com. That is the website. Can you advise what's the main key points in an essay to make it different? So basically, that's kind of the 3 kind of prongs that we went over in this presentation. So hopefully you'll have access to this presentation so you can see it all. But basically, you want to think about what you're saying and how you're saying it, right? So you want to have that creative nonfiction balance. So you want to have moments where you're telling a story and it's an emblematic anecdote. It reveals certain aspects of who you are, and then you want to critically analyze it. So you are getting into story form, and then you're kind of critically analyzing it in an authoritative, reflective voice. That's one key to make it very, very unique and different, because most students, unfortunately, the drafts that I read that then we work from, so I know that this is kind of where students start from, sometimes is missing that critical component, is missing that kind of analysis where you're breaking down the images that you've offered up. And then remember the 3 things that each essay, a successful essay, breaks down. You either want to talk about a character trait, so like perseverance, discipline, strength, adaptability, or who you are to others, and then a past experience. It is so important that it's shaped who you are. So a great essay talks about one of these 3. An excellent essay talks about 2 or 3 of them. And then the past, present, future legacy that we broke down, that we have samples in the presentation, right? So you want to start with the past memory that is emblematic of those character traits, right? Then you want to value it, how now that you're slightly older, a wiser, critical thinking person, how you think that moment was valuable to you. And then the future legacy, how has your mind shifted? How do you behave differently in certain situations? What have you started to help others in a similar situation, a student organization that you founded, community service project that you've done? So those are kind of very, very quickly. So I hope you have time to review the presentation. But very quickly, those are the 3 things that you want to think about, which is why brainstorming and really taking time with this essay is your best bet, because it should successfully, in order for it to be a successful essay, compelling essay, it should have many different dimensions, right? And so not only is it a good topic, I've read essays about things that you would think would be silly topics, about making pancakes on Sundays with his dad, about cutting coupons with her grandmother. So where the topic almost sounds silly or like everyday things, commonplace, but it's how you break that down. It's how you find that it's kind of, important to you. It's what the experience has taught you. How have you paid it forward? So it's a lot of kind of critical reflection, and then coming back to that one kind of anecdote, right? That felt very kind of commonplace and not, a random Saturday or Sunday afternoon, all of a sudden is kind of elevated to a level of family values, principles, of tradition and customs, and what that means to you, how you kind of pass along and continue to practice tradition and culture. So then it becomes something so much bigger. So really take the time to think about what you want to write, but then also kind of how you want to write it. All right, so I think I am wrapping up. We have just a couple more minutes, and I don't think I have any more questions. All right. So again, my website is writeyouracceptance.com. My name is Josie, and you have that website right there. You can also send me an email if you like. Let me see if I have the email up top. No, unfortunately. I am at thedrjosie@gmail.com. So THEDRJOSIE. So thedrjosie@gmail.com. But my website, and you can email me from there, is writeyouracceptance.com. And so any questions, I'm around. And I wish you guys so much luck in this process. I know it can get overwhelming, but you can do it. And, if you break it down in manageable pieces, and you really think through the essay part, which is really super, super important, because it's your direct line of communication with those admission officers. It's as if you were in the room talking to them, convincing them that you are their student to pick. So good luck, and I hope you have an excellent admission season. And it was a pleasure to chat with you guys. Thank you so much. So I am signing off. Yeah, no more questions. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good day.